So, welcome to Montreal Rocks. We have Mikey from the Manvilles, a legendary Canadian rock band. It's been around for quite a long time. I want to discuss so many things today. I want to discuss the Toronto move. I want to discuss fatherhood. I want to discuss the circumstances that kind of sparked this new album. But first, I wanted to go back, like way back. What was your earliest memory when music went from being something that you heard to something that you felt, maybe as a child?
Well, that's pretty easy. Should I crack a beer because it's Canada Day?
Oh, I could go get one. I'm having coffee.
Okay, so halftime for the halftime show, you can grab a beer. It's just that I finished mowing the lawn just now, and I feel like I accomplished half the day already by mowing that lawn. So, but thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you and all your followers and fans. It's great. It means a lot to me and the band. So thank you. To answer your first question, I would say watching the Jacksons and all the brothers in 1984 on the Thriller tour. It's one of my first memories ever. I was 4 years old. I was born in '80, so I was 4 years old. And I guess now, in retrospect, you could kind of say, wow, that's pretty creepy that Michael Jackson was your first memory. But I mean, as long as, he wasn't, my memory. Basically, I guess I got to say that.
As long as it didn't scar your memory, that's what.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. As long as I'm not in his memory, then we're good. But that was one of my first memories, my first live concert as well. And I guess
Really?
I used to dress in a white suit, the white glove, and I was making power moves for my family and all their friends. And it was, I don't remember all the dinner parties that I danced for, but yeah, I was definitely they would crank Thriller, and I would do the moves to every song, and I think there's a lot of kids that were doing that in '84. So that was definitely my first groove that I remember for sure.
Well, it's funny. Well, this is not about me at all, but just to give you some context, you just reminded me of this. My first time listening to a cassette on a Walkman was Thriller.
Oh, wow.
So that was an experience because it was in my ears, and it was just something that was just so different than anything I had heard of from before. And my second memory of Thriller was walking around Cornwall, where my grandparents are from, and
Yeah.
going to the Woolco back in the day, wearing one glove, cut off fingers, trying to be cool in an uncool town.
People thought you were like an employee at the shop,
I probably thought I was homeless.
No, that's good. That's good. He had a lot of great engineers around him, and those records are they will forever stand the test of time.
But obviously, performing was something that was early on for you.
Right. Yeah.
And that carried on. And then you met the rest of the members of the band.
I guess that would be like a fast forward 20 years, 2004. I remember the Manvilles. I used to be solo after high school. It was Mikey Manville for several years. I was studying at University of British Columbia, playing open mics, eventually playing concerts, running concerts, trying to put like-minded bands together. And They Might Be Giants asked me to open up. It was the biggest show I had ever played at the time at Richards on Richards. And they had asked for a singer-songwriter. And through, I guess, a channel through our Vancouver promoter, Ryan Bolesky, they found me. And this was, 2004. And I opened up for They Might Be Giants, and it was sold-out crowd. And that venue, rest in peace, doesn't exist anymore. I believe it's a condo, a couple of condo buildings now. But that was the best venue in the city, bar none, outside of the Commodore Ballroom. And I remember thinking, man, what if they had asked for a band? I would totally not be ready to say yes to that offer. And it was one of the best solo shows I had ever played. The crowd was with me all the way through. They even did the whole, it was pre-cell phone So they did the lighters for the
Lighters.
last song. I believe it was, I can't believe I remember this, but I had a song called End of an Era. It's the end of an era. It's the end of the day. And it was this sort of ballad, apocalyptic type ballad. And it was kind of cool, seeing all those lighters. I'd never felt stadium vibes before, and that was probably the closest I had come. And still, because, we're not a stadium band whatsoever, nor do we want to be. And I remember that moment. That was definitely when I thought I needed a band. And if they had asked, thank God they were looking for a singer-songwriter that night. And shortly after that, the Manvilles were formed completely. Right after that concert, within a month and a half, I was searching high and low. And I remember meeting the drummer at the time at a grocery store who had seen me live and wanted to join the band. And then I remember being at the video store, working at Rogers Video, with the largest adult section in Vancouver. Super, super duper store. And I'll never forget that I had made a call there was some sort of Star Wars trilogy, and there was a guitar player that I had called. And I think I promoted myself and a concert to all these clients that were picking up videos. Just because I was relentlessly promoting every show. So, we could get as sold out as possible to every singer-songwriter concert I was playing. And then he basically joined the band. My neighbor across the hall was Greg Buer, the bass player, the original OG Manvils bass player. I knocked on his door, and he was a little older than me. And he was like, "Who's this young kid that's so excited to hang out with me until 7 a.m.? We used to hang out from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. until the sun rose, listening to the Libertines and Franz Ferdinand when it was all coming out." I asked him to be the bass player, and that is how the Manvilles were formed. Within one summer of me just searching out people that were great people and really great musicians, and the vibe had to be there, and the Manvilles were born pretty much in 2015, 15 years ago, pretty much to the day.
And well, according to the Urban Dictionary, a manville is a combination of man and an anvil to make the heaviest tool on earth.
Thy thrust his manville on her bosom was something that we found in a Shakespeare. It was a Shakespeare short stories and short poem. It was not like one of his major plays. It was one of his earlier works. And I found out about a year after we called the band the Manvilles that hundreds of years ago it was actually referred to as a men's penis. Thy thrust his manville, and that was news to us. We were like, okay, I guess we're the dicks. So that was pretty good. And I guess it's like the Richard Dick type thing. That is a whole different meaning to the Manvilles. I guess it has a few different meanings, and then for us it just means rock and roll. So
you're redefining the term manville.
Yes, thank God.
So you grow a following. You've got this following in Vancouver. You're playing fairly big venues, and then you do this move to Toronto.
Yeah.
Were those circumstances that were sparked by a creative move for the band, or was it more of a personal move?
I'm from Toronto. I always knew one day I'd be back, but we came back a little bit earlier. A lot of it had to do with the most important thing to anyone, of course, is family, and that came calling quite quickly when there was just a family accident, and we had to become caregivers shortly after our return home, and that was the start of a pretty intense decade. Personally, I asked the band. I'll never forget asking Jay Kunderman. He's been our drummer for well over a decade now. I think he's been in the band for 12 years now. And at the time, in 2010, I had asked him, listen, I'm thinking of moving back. Jane and I are actually for sure moving back in around 6 months. Would you ever consider, no pressure, but would you consider joining us in the big city? And he's an Alberta guy. He was born in Bowmanville, Ontario, but most of his life was out west. And I'll never forget, he came back to me a few weeks later and he goes, listen, I asked Christine, my girlfriend, to marry me. And I said, oh my God, well, what are you going to do? He goes, well, I asked her to marry me, but then I also asked her, would you marry me on one condition, that we move with our cats across the city in the giant tour van and join the band and continue the band in Toronto. And Christine is incredible and West Coast, and she was just like, yes, we will do this. And so they took a big chance on the band and us and their future, and they moved with their kitties, and we continued. Greg stayed back, of course, because he had a daughter that was in high school, and you have to think about different things at that point in your life.
Uprooting a high schooler is quite different.
Yeah. So, she was in public school at the time, but high school was calling a few years later. Iris, not a baby anymore, beautiful girl. And we basically had to make a bass player change. And that was a whole wonderful story on itself, where we found Jason Skinzel, and he's featured on this record as well. And since then, there's been one final bass change, and we have an original bass player, Dave Fenton, who played on both my solo records. From the years 1999 to 2001, he's back in the band. I can't now believe the serendipity nature of myself and David connecting in Montreal. I was there for medical reasons, and he was there. Yeah, for work reasons. And he texted me. He goes, "I saw your Instagram pic. I'm here for a few hours. Do you want to go for a beer?" And I was picking up a guitar pedal outside of Montreal, one of the greatest builders, Stonefly Effects, Marc-Éric Gagnon. And I'll never forget, I showed up to a bar with a guitar pedal, the Stonefly Burns Buzz Round clone. Amazing, amazing unit. That is my favorite pedal to date. And we sat there, and we had been going through transition that month with Jason, who needed a timeout with the band. And I'll never forget saying, he asked, how are the Manvilles doing? You guys are always strong. And I said, well, actually, we're looking for a bass player. Would you like to be in the band? After 20 years, he had never been in the Manvilles before, but he knew all my solo stuff, and he's been in several punk bands. He's been really busy, and I just never thought he'd have the time, because he's always been just a guy in a couple of bands and having a life and a mortgage, and I just never thought he'd say yes. And he jumped at the opportunity, and that was he became the third bass player of the Manvilles last year. So we've gone full circle in 15 years, and the band is very stable, and that's the most important thing, is to keep the train going.
Unlike Spinal Tap, where they would lose their drummer, for you it was the bass player that was the missing piece.
Yeah,
at least exactly. There's no spontaneous combustion there.
And every bass player has been in the band for about 7 years, so it's not like we. I'm definitely not a fan of replacing band members or wanting band players to leave for whatever reason. But of course, after almost a decade, life changes for almost every band member, except for Jay Kunderman and myself. We seem to be this tied to the hip, and just have this really, really great musical bond. And every time we connect, it's just, we're always writing and thinking of new things. And, hopefully we'll be around for a really long time, the two of us.
So you've had some of the earlier albums and EPs. Then you did your solo project because you had so many extra material that was a bit more personal.
Yeah.
And then 6 years ago, you released the X-Pac EP.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems also that's when the love of fighter planes started, according to me.
You've seen the album covers; they're all linked. The photographer is Devin Lund, same photographer. So there's a theme. I'm trying to link it all together that way, as you can see. Yeah.
What triggered the desire to release this last album? Because there's a big gap there.
It was actually a part of a trilogy of EPs. So the third EP ended up being the record, just because that last EP took a little bit longer in California. We were a little bit more meticulous. It was further away to record, and going back and forth just took that extra year and a half. And then instead of releasing 3 EPs, I recognized that we had a full-length album ready to go, and songs like Expats had never seen the light of day on a full-length album. And the idea of remastering it with the same mastering guy and making it fit was always something that we were going to do. It just happened to take that extra couple of years, mostly because the studio that John had built for himself and for us in California took a little bit longer to build. His chain of command, he's got an amazing studio, but the gear is really expensive. And he was still finalizing it to finally work on the mixes. And so we were, he was just like, if you wait patiently, I will not let you down, my friend. And so when he got the mixing console and all the APIs and the new set in his private studio, we were so happy with the results, and we were so happy we were able to wait. And you know, Jay was very patient. I know that drummers always want to tour. Jay was like, "Oh my God, we got to release this. We got to get this out." And I, of course, am a little bit more of the well, let's make sure that it's perfect in every moment. So when we release it, we have zero regrets. And he was right on board. But that's why it took a long time. It's all self-funded, and a big part of this, outside of the Toronto studios, was John Akrid, who's, I guess, the fourth Manville. He's the guy who's been there since Buried Love, our first record, recording the majority of that as well in Vancouver. But now in California, he moved from Chicago to California, and to build that studio pretty much took half a decade. And so we were there. He invited us up to finally mix it. It was nice to know that it was finally there, and the chain of command to make it sound as huge as possible. You know, those are the fruits of the labor. So
It sounds fantastic. I mean, this is an album that you need to listen with headphones or a proper stereo. Don't listen to this off your iPhone or off a tiny dinky little Bluetooth speaker. You're doing yourself a disservice. I was listening to it on my AirPods, big sound, and it took on a new life, because I listened to it a couple times, just, you know, in the car or something. But listening to the earphones just kind of brought a new life, a richness, a depth to it. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
I want to talk about the creation of music. For a lot of musicians, it's a way to tackle the inner darkness, I found. There's a link that I've been seeing a lot lately. For others, sadly, it's not enough, and sometimes we lose them in tragic ways and way too early. What does music provide for you?
Well, I don't think musicians can afford therapists. You know, pretty expensive. So.
It's a vow of poverty almost, right?
Maybe that's the key. You know, we just music is therapy. It's the cliche. It's true. It rings true. It rings true to me. It rings true to everyone you probably talk to on this on your show. I've seen some of, you know, the most recent interviews that you've had, and you were able to extrapolate some really amazingly private information, and kudos to your interview skills. But that was definitely you know, I lost a lot of amazing family members in my immediate family, brother-in-law and mother-in-law, father-in-law, all in quick succession. And it's still hard to talk about. I don't often talk about it. And that is all in the song. The spirit is in the song. You know, it's the way that I know that I can memorialize, you know, all these amazing loves of my family's life in song. It happens to be a really heavy rock and roll song on this record, because the solo stuff, they're also memorialized in a little bit more of a Elliott Smithy type acoustic vibe, light. But with the Manvilles, you know, we're a power trio, so there's no reason why we can't have the same type of respect in a song that knocks your socks off with rock and roll guitars. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, I hope I'm answering the question accurately, but definitely cathartic experience. We're on the other side now as a family. You know, I have a baby girl, and my wife is the strongest woman I know, and her sister is as well. So, yeah, it's pretty spectacular that we've been able to navigate through this and come out the other side and feel pretty good during you know, the time of crisis that we're in right now.
I was just yesterday. I was at a friend's house, and she also lost both parents in quick succession. Mother first, father recently. I mean, this is like 2 weeks ago. So
sorry to hear.
There's and going back to your music and this album and being a bit more harder, more rockier. There are what is called the 5 stages of grief. There's denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance.
Yeah.
Maybe the anger comes out in the more aggressive music, but what was maybe the hardest for you to go through out of those 5?
that's a, you know what, that I think there's moments of all of those five stages are definitely, I don't know if you could say that they're like highlighted in the songs, um, because a song can come to you in a flash, and you're not trying to think about, um, you're almost like in a state of uh, now when you write, and so
Oh, you're in flow.
to try to link that current spirit, you're pretty excited when you're writing a song, and when it hits, you're not in a, you know, or myself, I can speak to myself only. I'm not in a, you know, a really really dark place typically when I write. I am rounding the bend, and I'm seeing the light when that chorus is being written. Um, Writing is a really really positive experience for me, and it fuels maybe that, you know, that energy that people, whatever they say that I have this, you know, crazy I'm crazy apparently. I have a lot of energy, and I guess that energy I get from writing. And it's hard to say, it's really hard to answer that question. All I can say is that, um, I guess it just drives you to dig deep. And lyrically, when you get political or you get emotional, that is when the best work comes. You know, you're not sitting down and writing about a frustrating experience you had at the restaurant or something like that. You know, it's when you are at your deepest truth is revealed, is definitely, when the artist is at its peak. And it's an unfortunate situation because you actually, I'd rather not even be an artist and have my family around, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's the least I can do. It's the least I can do, and it's what I happen to be good at. And so I'm thankful that, you know, I've worked that muscle in my brain for 25 years, and I'm just happy that people are digging what they hear. But yeah, it's a really tough question to, the grieving question is tough. It's hard to link. It's hard to explain. It just, I don't even know how it exists.
I,
It just
I'm,
exists.
I haven't had anybody that close yet, so I can't speak for myself yet on this topic. But from what I've seen from close friends, I know it comes in waves, and not necessarily in order. And one day you can have multiple ones come at you at the same time. I'm going to read you a quote that I selected for you. I sometimes bring in quotes. This is from Chuck Palahniuk, uh, writer of Fight Club, apparently. He says, "We all die. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will."
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. I, I mean, that is pretty much what I'm obsessed about myself on a personal level.
So
Um,
we can't live forever now, but what we can create something that will. So what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to be your legacy?
you know, the music is one thing. I mean, I understand that vinyl is, that's why in 2009 we were printing vinyl and everyone was going, "What's this? This is not going to sell." The vinyl was not really a big thing then. I think 2008, 2009 is when we started pressing a lot. So I wanted things to exist in perpetuity. I knew that the online world is just, you know, it's something that will exist, I guess. But, you know, maybe all computers will be buried before vinyl will be dusted off, before the hard drives, most certainly. But I guess being a really, really caring person is the most important thing. It has nothing to do with music. I want to be remembered for, you know, being a really uh, good father and good friend and good family member and friend, to everyone I know, and to actually strangers that I meet. I'm, as anyone who knows me, I love giving everyone as much time as I can before I have to take a piss. So I'll, I'll be there. I'll be there holding, clenching. I love chatting, and I'll never stop. I guess that's what I want to be known for. And obviously the music is one thing, but whatever. It's music. It's something that it means nothing unless you're a good person. That's what I've learned over the time. Because how many great musicians have you met, um, that are, you know, complete dicks? I've met a few, and it's just, I actually stopped listening to their music, and I don't find it interesting at all, and I used to like it. So,
No,
you know, that doesn't happen too often, but we
but
know about
I'm just
that.
thinking about where are they now? If music is all about ego and about feeding your ego, getting that adoration, now you can't tour. You're
Yeah.
left being an empty shell. What are those
Yeah.
people doing?
I mean, I guess that's why I don't tour that much. I know that touring can kind of break you. We've seen it with the greatest musicians of our era. I mean, lately, with Prince and sorry, with Prince and Tom Petty going down, those were two shockers. Touring killed those guys. A lot of it had to do with pills and all that sort of stuff that we all know about, and you know, the accidental overdosing and all that sort of stuff. And
Going
yeah,
back to
Tom's
Michael
hit.
too.
But Tom was, I have to tour. I've got a family, not only a family to feed, but I've got a band to feed. I've got soundmen. I've got a whole stage crew. I mean, once you get to that level, touring, you are responsible for hundreds, dozens up to hundreds of people. And that's not even Montreal Canadiens. Okay, of course. Go Leafs. um, Poor Austin Matthews. But anyhow, so when it comes to that pressure, what were we talking about again? I think the question was
we're,
about.
we're talking about legacy and touring and the how it takes its toll.
It takes its toll. So I just feel like, yeah, I just think that maybe that kind of life can lead to disastrous personal results and disastrous personal life choices. And there's a lot of bands that are touring that are incredibly stable and go back to their wonderful lives. But I would say that it's probably a minority. And so I would like to tour more after all of this is over. But having, you know, several years of not doing dozens and dozens of tours and shows is something that has made me a stronger person, a stronger man. My family is a stronger unit because of focusing more on the song, focusing more on the album, putting on my creative hat more than the touring hat. And there's a, you know, the other side to it where you're not gaining fans on a nightly basis, sleeping on, you know, there's baby Grace over there making a sound, but you know, not sleeping on couches in friends' houses or hotels, and, you know, sleeping in tour buses. I understand the fun in that, but there is a balance to life, and I chose balance over, or up until now, I've chose balance over, you know, touring with your head cut off.
And maybe you're ahead of the game. You're you know, now that touring is no longer a thing, this whole pandemic has forced us to press pause on life. And for one thing, uh, the normal was this burnout pace we had. You know, go, promote, tour. Whether you're in business or you're a mom or you're whatever you're doing, it was this burnout pace. We're like insanely busy, and now we had to force ourselves to press pause.
Yeah.
But you were able to do that and focus on your family, you know, a little bit before. So you kind of you're ahead of the game in that sense. So
Yeah, I felt a
you're
lot of
still putting
pressure.
out music.
I felt a lot of pressure by not touring every record, because I've released in between the Manvilles, that 5-year gap, you know, I released a solo record and I didn't tour much on that. The reception was amazing online and in the shows that I played locally and in Ontario, but it just wasn't in the cards. I was trying to actually start a family at that time. So, I mean, it's a no brainer, but, you know, at the same time, we haven't been in this incredible, ever since Sandbag Records and Richard passed away, who was our Sandbag founder, who was someone else that was so close to me, right in the middle of all of this family loss. Right after
2016, right?
Yeah, right after he passed, you know, we didn't go out looking for a new label. We continued to write, and I continued to write as a singer-songwriter on my solo stuff and with the Manvilles. And the agency group, all of these other labels, we weren't asking for anything, and nor did we receive anything. So I guess it was very tactical, where I was happy that the pressure had been sort of moved over to creating a family, and you know, it was different pressure points that were more personal, and the music pressure points were a little bit more on me, and I didn't have as much responsibility to bring anything to the table to any label. And so that freed me up in my head to just to basically do what I've been doing in Toronto with the band, which is just hunkering down, being creative. You know, we all have other jobs too. And so, yeah, we just, we live life here in Toronto. It's been pretty amazing.
And Grace will thank you for that. You know, in years to come, you were there when it counted the most. She might not even know it yet, or she might, you know, might not realize it yet. But it's important for us dads to be around and not to abandon family just for rock and roll.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thanks. I just heard her wake up, so maybe you'll get to meet her at the end of the interview. I'll bring her in.